Hey everyone, I'm Eklund Arts. Welcome to my first ever video. I'm a artist that has had a fascination with board games for almost as long as I can remember. And I have decided for my career that I am trying to get into board game miniatures. And so I thought that I would start up a small little YouTube series where I show my process of painting the various minis. For my first ever video, I wanted to start with something small, something a little bit simple, so that I can kind of test my method of how I'm making videos. Also something that you guys can maybe try and replicate as well if you wanted to. Mini that I'm going to be painting today, I have 3 of them, but they're all the same model, is this Cave Bear mini. It came from one of the Dungeons & Dragons board games. Pretty decent quality. It has some good fur in it. Type of model that I think will do really well with wash when we get to that part. But it is a cave bear. It's going to be kind of a really light brown. The skin is going to be more of a flesh tone than a black. And so I figure we'll just go ahead and get right into it. I'm going to start by taking my palette over here, and I'm going to make a nice little base coat, I think, for this bear. To start off, I think the color that I'm going to be going with is a very light brown. And to do this, I always tend to put out a little bit more paint than I need, just because I think it's better have more than necessary, you know. It's just some cheap acrylic that you can get like Hobby Lobby. I am not at the point yet where I'm using good model paints because those can be a bit expensive, and you know, being a college student, you don't always have that much money. So it's kind of trying to get good paint jobs on a budget. Going to have a new set of brushes that I am using. And we're going to go ahead and take the biggest brush out of this set. So the colors I'm mixing together is a burnt sienna, which is usually the paint that I tend to use for like wood, and then I use the burnt umber for more natural kind of furs and dirts and that sort of thing. But since this is kind of an off-color fur, not really getting a whole lot of daylight hitting it, I thought I would try using this stuff to see just how it works with the flesh tone. I'm using the little end of the brush to try and keep the bristles a bit cleaner. Thing I've noticed from paint brushes, you end up going through them a lot faster if you are using the bristles for everything, just because they get worn down and then it's really hard to keep that fine tip. So I think I'm going to go just a little bit lighter than this. I think that's a good color. It's almost somewhat sickly, I would say. One second. I have something that I can use to wipe off this paint. A lot of people just use paper towels and stuff. I actually like to use toilet paper. Might sound a little strange, but I feel like it absorbs moisture a bit better than most most paper towels do. And so when you end up having your cup that is filled with water, it helps kind of get rid of that just a little bit. Speaking of water, I need to actually go fill up my cup. All right, so we now have this little cup of water. The bad thing about acrylics that, you know, would like to get into good model paints eventually. Acrylics are a bit thick, and so they don't really do well with those little kind of seams that you could see within that mini. If I just use this paint without watering it down first, when I eventually get through to this wash, which when we do that, I'll explain what that is, it wouldn't help pick up on the shadows and it would really make this mini look flat. So I'm going to take some water, and because I have a decent amount of paint here, I don't really need to worry about how much water I'm putting in there. I'm going to kind of help get it in there, get it thinned out just a little bit. I don't want too much, or else the paint's not really going to stick to the mini too well. But I think something like that. And then I'm just going to go over the fur, and I'm going to help kind of just give it a nice base color. I'm just trying to cover everything that's going to be in this fur. Okay, so now this first one, the fur has a nice little base coat on it. The great thing about painting an animal, at least to start off with, is that you could be fairly quick about it. You don't need to touch every little aspect of it, simply because if you don't, like, you know, for instance, the minis when they start off, I already gave them a nice little black coat, which, as you can see, I wasn't very careful. As you can see, I was not very careful with. That's because at the very end, I can just go back over and paint it black. But the original minis have this kind of deeper, richer, I'm not sure I would necessarily darker, but a different shade of brown to them. Now, if I don't hit every little bit of that richer brown fur on this mini, then eventually when it's all done, it's gonna have nice little shades of color to it. If I just hit every single bit, if I'm being extremely careful, which, you know, you can do, it's just gonna make that mini look a bit more, I'm not sure I would necessarily say fake, but more cartoonish, I would say. It's gonna have a lot more of just a solid color to it. And so I tend to like to be a little bit more quick with my minis. So now I'm just going to go through and I'm going to do this exact same process with the other two minis. Okay, so if I can get my camera to focus in, there we go. All right, so the kind of base paint for the fur is pretty much done here. You could probably go in if you really wanted to. If you wanted to try and get some variation of that fur, you could maybe add a tad bit more yellows to this color that we have. Make it look a bit more sickly if you really wanted to. But I think for right now, this is about how I would like to have it. Going forward, things that we're going to need to go up and touch. If I can get a nice close-up. Okay, so first off, we need to get these eyes. I'm thinking not really what a cave bear looks like, but, you know, artistic interpretation. If I can, come on, refocus. I'm thinking about making these bears blind. So doing a nice little off-white would be very nice, I think, for those. It would also go well with these teeth, which I'm thinking of just doing a nice titanium white. Just gonna help make them pop. And then the lips, of course, being a bear, probably gonna be a bit more black, just like this snout. There is a little bit of skin up around here, so I'm probably gonna make that a nice kind of fleshy gray, I'm thinking. And then, of course, mouth. It's gonna be a nice red. And claws, probably gonna be the same as teeth. I'm gonna do a titanium white. Thing to keep in mind, well, if you are doing this, is that these base colors you want to keep very much lighter than what you're expecting it to look like. When we put on this wash, I can quickly show you. I have a wash that not many people would probably recommend, simply because I am getting into this hobby. I don't have the funds to afford a lot of the great stuff. But I have a just pure black wash that, funnily enough, is meant for vehicles. But I tend to use it for everything because it is what I have. So when we get done with these base coats, I'm going to use this, water it down a bit, and we're going to cover the Mini in this, which is going to completely darken everything up. We'll be able to go in afterwards and kind of fix that stuff. But the reason you want to keep this stuff light is so that when you do put on that wash, the entire Mini doesn't become black. So I'm going to grab another brush that has a bit more of a tip, because after doing that painting, you might be able to see that those brushes, you might be able to see that my brush is starting to split into two. And I don't really want to do that if I'm dealing with very small parts of the Mini. So I'm going to grab another brush, and I'm going to go in and I am going to get those details on all of the Minis. Just need a little tiny bit on that brush, if it would focus. Oh well, I'm sure you all get the point. And now, honestly, if you screw up here a little bit, great thing about having extra paint is that we can just go back in and cover up the paint that is a bit too much for this eye. You still do want to be careful, though. You don't want to have to do too much touch-up work. I think that's all right. It might look a bit messy now, but it's gonna get fixed pretty soon. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this on the rest. And now I am going to suggest that move on to the mouth. Should be fairly obvious, but you really want to get the inside of that mouth before you start dealing with the teeth and the lips. So I'm going to go ahead, I think I'm going to use, should I go primary? Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and use some primary red because I think this is going to look great once that black wash really starts pooling up into that mouth. So, unlike the fur, you don't really need a whole lot of this stuff. You just need enough that you can cover what you need to cover, which, because, you know, minis are so small, that's not a whole lot. I don't know if I can say for normal model paints, but at least for acrylic, you don't have to be very careful with it. I mean, even colors like white, I don't know if you can see, but even on that normal like black or brown color, it just really covered that up nicely. So with this red, I don't need to really be careful on if it touches the teeth or not, because the white will just cover it right back up. Now this stuff, I really, really don't want to grab much. And I want to get a brush that I know I can be very, very detailed with. I think I'm going to use this one. You only want a little bit on that brush. We're also gonna get the nose while we're at it. Actually, I think we're going to make the nose the normal gray, the skin gray color, but we're just going to mix in just a touch of the black with that in order to get the color we're looking for. Let's take just a little bit, rather than using the acrylic flesh tone, I find that stuff to be a bit too yellow. And so instead, so I do have some model paints, not a lot, but I have some. And the one that I honestly would recommend you get first if you ever want to try and do this, is just some good flesh tone. You can get this stuff for fairly cheap, Hobby Lobby, $5. And it goes a decent ways, especially when you're doing smaller people. But I'm gonna use some of this. Kind of need to shake it a little bit in order to get it going. And I'm gonna add just a single drop. Ooh, don't bubble. Stop bubbling. Hopefully that will give it a nice bit of color to it. Because we want it to look gray and faded, but we don't want it to look unnatural. So that's with a little bit of the flesh tone. Let's go ahead and give it a little bit more. I think that's looking a bit better, I think. Okay. So now the question is, do I like this? Or do I want to get rid of it? I think I like the idea of it, but I don't want it to look so blocky. So what if we try and fade it into the rest of the fur? To do that, we're going to do a thing called dry brushing. We're going to do it at the very end of this model as well, but we can also do it near the beginning. We're going to basically take our paint color, and we're going to try and wipe a lot of it off onto our paper, or in my case, toilet paper. And we're just going to take the brush and we're just going to start lightly blending it into the mini. I think here I might have wiped off a bit too much. So I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna grab some more. Just wipe it off. And then just gently put that on there. Now, do I like this better? I think I like this better. And I think a lot of this is gonna pop out nicely once we get to the wash. I'm gonna do just a bit more blending. I'm just gonna spread it out to more of the body just so all that gray isn't located in one spot. I like this idea. Showing right before the close. So we're going to get that in. All right. Now for the last bit of base coloring, I'm gonna add just a little bit of black to this already existing gray that we have. Just a little bit of dabs on the nose will do. All right, and now the base coloring is done. So right now what we have is this lovely looking fella. And you know, at this point, he'd be pretty much okay to use on a table. You probably need to touch up this base here a bit. You can still see, you just need to cover it up with black a little bit. But you know, honestly, you could use this on a table.